I am so excited to introduce you to Becky Kemp. We are so excited to have you here, Becky. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Today, you are in for a treat because Becky, she is a master storyteller and she podcasts at the Word Effect, which is all about the power of words. And she's going to go into that in a little bit. But she is a mother of 5 kids. She lives out in Utah with her husband, her high school sweetheart. I would love to hear that story someday. She enjoys morning walks, being with her family, going boating at Lake Powell. That's fun. And really, recently she said she's been dusting off her dancing shoes and taking up clogging. That is pretty interesting. So there's a lot that we are going to learn from Becky today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to her.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. And I just want to start out by saying, boy or girl, and ask you, what does that word mean to you? About 16 years ago in my life, I was laying on an ultrasound table, anxiously awaiting to hear the gender reveal of baby number 4. And I had the ultrasound tech on one side of me and my husband on the other. And as the ultrasound tech finished up the measurement, she said, "Are you ready to hear what you're having?" I looked at my husband, gripped his hands and said yes. And I was wanting a particular word at that moment. The ultrasound tech looked at me and she said, "You're having a healthy baby boy." Well, my husband was ecstatic, but I felt a lot of emotion come over me and tears started coming down the sides of my face. The ultrasound tech removed herself from the room and my husband kind of looked at me a little confused and he said, "Why are you crying? They just told us that it's a healthy baby boy." And I asked for a moment and I said, if they would have just told you that this is your 4th girl, you might be crying. And that's what I had just found out, that I was having my 4th boy. Now, not that that's a bad thing, but, growing up, I just assumed I would have 2 boys and 2 girls. I just had a story that I had told myself. And what I've come to find out is our story doesn't quite unfold how we think or how we had planned. But what I do know is that we can still be happy and embrace our story. And the reason why I talk about the word effect and the power of words is because there's a circumstances. Boy is a circumstance. It meant something different to me than it meant to my husband. So he was ecstatic thinking, I'll never have to sit in a dance recital. I got one more boy for my baseball team. This is great. I was having thoughts. I was putting on thoughts like, I'll never be able to plan a wedding. I won't be able to get a daughter ready for junior prom. I won't have a little baby to dress in tights and cute bows. And so I had different thoughts about the word boy than my husband did. And sometimes we think that it's our circumstances that drive our lives and our stories. And we think, when this changes or that changes, then I can be happy. But what I've come to experience is what I like to call the word effect. The words that we put on matter, and we can actually create the story that we've always wanted just through the power of words. So I started discovering this, and there's a quote by Jim Rome, and it's, "There are no new fundamentals. All truth is been around." I want to offer that the power of words has been around for as long as the creation of the universe. That's how God created the worlds. It came through thought. It came through voice. It came through that creative process. And that's kind of what the word effect is. It's the creative process of becoming better, and it comes through words. So several years ago, I found myself full of negativity. I was suffering with some depression, some anxiety. Not only did I have 4 boys, 5 years later, I had 1 more boy. Now, I don't say that that's a bad thing, but what I point out is things don't go according to plan. Again, I want you to think about your own story. Has it gone exactly the fairy tale version that you thought? For me, I suffered with anxiety. I suffered with some depression. We went through some really, really hard financial years that many people did during kind of the 2007 to 2010 years. They came out of nowhere and just almost slapped us upside the head. And we went into all this, like, what did we do wrong? We didn't expect for this to happen. I've suffered with a lot of food issues and actually work in a 12-step recovery program with food issues. So I've had a lot of things come into my life that when I was, in high school thinking of what my life was going to be, none of these things were in my story. Over time, I let those things really start to weigh me down. And there's the expression, negativity begets negativity. And when we start feeling negative and we start putting negative words into our lives, they grow. We see more negative things. And research backs this up. And there's a reason for this because our brains are wired to protect us. And so when they see negative things, they want to protect us and they pull us back kind of to our cave. And psychologists call this the negative bias. And I look at it like a little thin thread wrapped around my neck, and it just kind of got tighter and tighter and tighter. So the older I got, the more I just saw my life through negative eyes. I was always like, when this happens, then I can be happy. Or when my husband makes more money, or when I, lose those last few pounds, or when my kids grow up, then I can pursue my dreams. I was always living in this, like, when this happens, then I will be happy. And what I've found with the power of words is that we can actually feel and embrace happiness, joy, love, peace all right now. We don't have to wait for our circumstances to change. We want to just start putting on thoughts that help us. And think about, like, if you were to, I live in Utah, if you came here, we're known for having beautiful mountains. And right outside my window are the Wasatch Mountains, and they're big and beautiful. And if I were to go hiking up those mountains on a beautiful spring morning and I noticed the green, coming back to life, and I was taking in the deep breaths of air and I was having a wonderful experience. But as I went up the mountain, I saw a rattlesnake to the side of me. I was never in harm's way, but I saw this rattlesnake. You know what would happen is when I would come down the mountain and my friend would say, Becky, how was your hike? The first thing I would probably offer is, I saw a rattlesnake. I wouldn't offer all the amazing things because it's that negative bias. We tend to focus on the negative, and then if we don't catch ourselves, it tends to grow and grow and grow. Now, there's nothing wrong with referencing the rattlesnake, but we do want to say, well, I saw a rattlesnake, but also I had the most amazing experience because of this and this. But sometimes we just focus on the negative. There's a research done by the National Science Foundation, and it's published an article talking about humans and thoughts. And it says the average person has between 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. Most of the thoughts are subconscious and we don't even think about them. But this is the statistic I find very fascinating. It says of those thoughts, 80% of them are negative. 95% of those thoughts are exactly the same repetitive thoughts we had the day before. So what that tells me is that a lot of our thoughts tend to go on the negative side. And a lot of our thoughts are, we just have them over and over again. We just kind of like, we wake up every morning and we just start thinking those same thoughts, and we stop to question them. We stop to think, is this thought serving me? Is this what I want to do? Is this, and what happens is when we have a thought over and over and over again, it becomes a belief and we stop questioning it. And then we just start believing it. If I were to tell you that the sky is green and I told you this over and over and over again, you would start to believe that with time. Because you're like, oh, our thoughts become our beliefs. And so we want to just really notice how powerful words are. When I was really struggling, a friend of mine gave me a suggestion, and she said, Becky, you're always complaining and saying, why is this happening? And why is that happening? She said, what if you change one word in your story? Instead of saying why, what if you were to say how? How do I make the best of having struggles with food? How do I make the best of having 5 boys? How? And as we change just one word in our story, when we start asking how, that's an empowering word. and it puts our brain to work. So like if you were to say, why am I not happy? Your brain will just point out all the reasons why you're not happy. It will go to the negative. But if you were to say, how do I be happy? Your brain starts looking for the positive, like, what can I do? And that's what I really believe the power of words and the word effect really is about, is it's a power that each one of us has within us. We don't have to wait for other people to change things. We have this power within us. And as I began to discover that, it has completely transformed my life. When I was a young girl, I always wanted to be a speaker and write a book, but I let fear get in my way. And I would just put those negative thoughts like, I'm not good enough. I don't have a story to share. I always used to think I needed this great, grandiose story. And I remember one time going to Education Week, and that's an event held at Brigham Young University here in Utah. And it's where they have classes, kind of like what we're in here, just class after class of these motivational speakers. And they had these amazing stories. And I remember just thinking, oh, but I don't have a cool story. My story is not anything significant. And I've come to realize that's not true, that each one of us has a story. And our story is unique to us because it's our story. And what the gift is that it would be boring if we had the same story. We love to have different perspectives, but I had to start seeing things differently. And it took me some time. I started really experiencing what I like to call the word effect is when I was watching a Netflix documentary as the power of words started to come into my life. What I believe is that as you start to look for positive and goodness, you'll see more of it and it will grow. I heard this, put these words in your life. I accept myself unconditionally right now. I couldn't even remember those words at the time. I didn't accept myself unconditionally because I just was so unhappy, waiting for my life to start living. And I was 39 years old at the time. I'm 45 now. So this has been some progression that I've gone on. I was able to show up to events and say all the right things, but like internally, I was struggling. And I just had this little thought, like, I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So I put these words on a little 3x5 card and I hung them in my mirror in my bathroom. And the documentary said, say them to yourself every morning, 5 times, every middle of the day and every night. So I decided to put them in my on my bathroom mirror because I at least knew that I would remember to say it when I brushed my teeth. I started this process, and what I want to tell you about the power of words is it is not something that happens overnight. It is consistent little efforts. But as I began to put the power of words to work, I started to feel differently. I started to put on different thoughts, and I would start to think, yeah, I do accept myself. I'm not that bad. And it started to make how I felt different. And then what I coach on, I'm a life coach, and I like to point out that it's our thoughts that drive how we feel, and our feelings drive our actions, and our actions create our results. And I had lived for so long just from working from my action line. Like if I only could do more, if I only was more. And I got into that compare and despair game that many of us do, right? It's like, oh, if I only had this, or if I was only taller, or if I only had brown hair, if I only, right, blue eyes. And again, it's that negative bias and it just grows and grows. So as I started to discover the power of words, I had this idea come to me to put positive messaging on t-shirts. And I had always wanted an idea to run my own business, but I never allowed myself to dream. And as I had this idea, the idea came very strong. I believe it came from God. And as soon as I had it, that negative bias was like, yeah, but that's not real. That's not a real original idea. There's t-shirts everywhere. But I was looking for power words on my t-shirts because as a mom of 5 boys, I sit at a lot of baseball games. That's one of my favorite pastimes is to watch my boys play. And I just wanted a positive message. Well, when you go shopping for something that you want, you can't find it anywhere. Well, that was my experience. I was at Park City one summer with my husband for our anniversary. And I said, all I want is a positive t-shirt, t-shirt. And I couldn't find any. And that's when the idea sparked. And I believe that God puts ideas in our story and we have to learn to nurture them and be creative and ask questions and ask how. As I began to ask how, I teamed up with my sister-in-law and we created a business called Becoming Threads. And our tagline was, let what you wear tell your story. And we put different messaging that meant something to us on t-shirts and sweatshirts and apparel. And it was mainly for women. And we had shirts like Keep It Simple, Grateful Heart, Choose Happy, among others. And we loved the idea of putting the power of words on physically every day. And we would joke with women at events that we sold them to and we sold online. And we would say, we can walk into our closet every day and we can think about what words do I need to put on today. And if I was feeling a little off, maybe overwhelmed, I could put on my Keep It Simple shirt because it would remind me, just keep it simple. Or I could put on my Easy Does It shirt, like when I was feeling like, I don't know what to, I can't figure out that next decision. And as I got thinking about it, what came to me is that power is within us already. We spend more time thinking about what we might wear each day than the words we actually put on. Like, think about it. You can walk into your closet and think about, okay, like right now, it's cold outside. I need to wear a jacket. I need to wear boots. I'm not going to wear sandals. Like, I think about that. But how often do you wake up and think about the thoughts you're putting on and intentionally and deliberately put on thoughts? I had never done that until I started discovering the power of words. And that's kind of what continued to spark me forward. And one of my favorite books, it's by Marie Forleo, and it's Everything is Figure Outable. And she talks about, this is her power word, everything is figure outable. And if you have any interest in words, I recommend this book. But she says this, you are 100% responsible for your life, always and in all ways. It's not your parents, it's not the economy, it's not your husband or your wife or your family. It's not your boss. It's not the school you went to. It's not the government or society. You are responsible for what you believe, how you feel, and how you behave. To be clear, I'm not saying you're responsible for the actions of others or injustices that have happened to you, but you are responsible for how you respond to the actions of others. In fact, lasting happiness can only come when you take 100% responsibility for yourself. And I just love how she says that because it puts the ownership of our lives back on us. So again, I told you about having my fourth boy and I felt sadness. I don't have to be embarrassed that I felt sad. That's where my story was at that moment. But I decided I wanted to embrace and love my story. My son that I was telling you about, his name's Trevor, I absolutely adore, and I can't imagine my life without him. My financial insecurities and hardships that I was given, as I've gotten through those trials, they have been such a blessing in my life. I'm here today pursuing and doing something that I've always wanted to do and found my passion with the power of words because of the hardships that I faced. And oftentimes our story is like that. When we look back, we can see that God has been guiding our story all along. My business is called Becoming with Becky, and it's because it's all about becoming better. I started with Becoming Threads, the t-shirt business. At the end of 2019, my sister-in-law and I decided that we both felt like our passions were being taken different places. I wanted to speak more and write a book about the power of words, and she wanted to get back into teaching. And so we were both able to take what we learned and then move forward to the next step. I find myself doing things today that 6 and 7 years ago, I never imagined I'd be doing. And I sometimes go, how did this happen? Well, how it happened is one step at a time with the word effect. I like to tell people that you can ditch willpower and put on word power. And that's what my podcast is about. It's called The Word Effect. And it's all about putting the power of words back to work. And it starts with awareness. Sometimes we just get so busy in life, we don't even think about the words we're putting on. And we want to start to become aware to them. Wendy Nelson wrote a book called The Heavens Are Open, and this is what she said. Words can bring joy and love and hope and peace into our homes and into our relationships. That's what I found with the power of words. a lot of the things that I was struggling with, my anxiety, my depression, my food issues, they haven't gone away, but I've learned how to manage them better as I've learned to take 100% responsibility for my story and how I can offer other things. I put on words that help me feel more love and content and peace instead of words that make me feel overwhelmed, right? It's like, how do I show up today? Who can I serve today? How can I embrace the story that I have? It helps me to stop comparing myself to others. It helps me become better. As I shared with you, I'm doing things that I always wanted to do. And the book that I'm working on, I'm hoping to get out by the end of this year, 2021. And it's all about the word effect. And I actually have 7 power words that to me are a circular effect of how you move your story forward. And why I like the circle effect, and that's what my logo is, Becoming with Becky, is because becoming is a word that we're always working on. There's not the finish line. And that's kind of how our stories are. I met with a friend just this morning, and she was heartbroken because something had happened out of the blue. And it rocked her story. But she knew that as she worked through it, she would be okay. But you guys can understand that, right? Like things come into our stories at times that we didn't anticipate or we didn't think were going to happen. And so we want to learn to become aware, and it's okay to feel angry when we need to feel angry or sad when we need to feel sad, but then we don't want to stay there. And that's where I like to think of it. Remember that little game when you were in grade school, hot potato, and you would get the hot potato and you would pass it as quick as you can? That's what I want to kind of say about the power of words is, remember, if 80% of our thoughts are negative, we can't always control our first thought, but we can start to control our second and third thought. And so it's almost like, oh, here comes that negative thought again. I'm going to pass it on. Here comes that thought again. And on my website, I want to offer to all of you, you can go there. It's at becomingwithbecky.com, but I have a free download. And the download is Gratitude Helps You Fall in Love with the Life You Already Have. And it's a print that you'll download, and then you can print it and put it in your house. And these are the first power words that I want to offer you. I want you to put these words in your life somewhere where you can see them often. And when that negative thought comes, I want you to start thinking, oh yeah, but I'm going to put on gratitude. And gratitude helps me fall in love with the life I already have. Because if we're always waiting to fall in love with the life down there, we're never going to find happiness. We're never going to feel joy. And we are to enjoy our lives here on this earth. I really, truly believe that. George Lucas, he's a famous filmmaker known for Star Wars, but he has said, always remember your focus determines where your reality is. So I want to ask you, where is your focus? What are you focused on today? As I've talked about the power of words, start to become aware of the words you're putting on. They matter. Words can create happiness and good in your life, or they can create sadness. And we have the power to start choosing. Stephen Covey has said this about words, and I just love this. He says, when used correctly and positively, words are the first building blocks for success and inner peace. They provide the vision and focus that show the way to growth and contribution. But if used incorrectly and negatively, they are capable of undermining even the best of intentions. This is true in business, in personal relationships, and in every other walk of life. Words have power.
I think that it's powerful because you said something that was key. Change one word in your story. And so here, as we're trying to craft our own stories, we have the choice of what our story will become. And I love how you're becoming with Becky, right?
Yes, yes. And the first word to change is stop saying why and start saying how. Just that word is so empowering because it's like, how am I supposed to embrace my story today? Start asking that, and you'll start to be directed. Things will come into your life. Words will come into your life. I cannot tell you when I need to find something to help me take that next step forward in my story, as I start asking empowering questions, it's kind of like I'm just directed to it. And then I do have to be patient. It doesn't happen overnight. Remember, it's a consistent effort. But then it's like, oh, that's the next step, especially with writing my book. As I've been like looking for those stories and those different things, as I focus on the word and I start to look for it, it's like they kind of find me. So it's empowering, and it's a power that each one of us has within us.
Yeah, I think that's so amazing on how it also shows. You said something about see the lack in our own story, and that the power of the words can change that story. And I think that as storytellers of our own life, the life of our loved ones, like as you podcast and you're sharing stories, that we need to reframe. It sounds like we need to do some reframing in our brain, and we need to, because we all see those stories, the happily ever after, and once upon a time and happily ever after. Well, how do we create that? Well, it starts with what you're talking about. It starts with the foundation of what we're thinking. So I just love that. That is so.
Yeah, and we can't change many of our circumstances, right? I couldn't change that I was having all boys. That was not what I had wanted or thought I wanted, but that's what I got. But I've learned that it's okay. And if you were to ask me today, I completely embrace and love being a boy mom, right? And that's the thing, is we learn to embrace, and it's because of the thoughts we put on. If we're always putting on negative thoughts, we have a really hard time feeling peace or joy about things. It's like butting heads. It's like resistance.
Right. Yeah, I love that. The other thing you said that was really good was use your stories today to cause change. Or you said something like that, and that's in what I heard. And I love that idea that we can, and like you said, it's not changing the circumstance, but it's changing your attitude towards that. When you were talking about your son, I totally felt it, because I had 2 boys, 1 girl, and then the 4th one, I was hoping it was a girl, and I was done. And I remember when they said a boy, I pulled over the side of the road, and I cried. So I feel you. But yet I am the same. I love that boy. But it is a changing. And you know what's so cool, though, when it doesn't work in that happily ever after, your story becomes even better. It's almost like through the journey of the heart. And now you have that story, and it is, I don't know, there's something about the power of our experiences and then being able to share that with others that connects us all together. And that's what we're hoping, is through stories and through what you're doing with your podcast and your movement with the Word Effect, which I just love. We're connecting again, connecting with ourselves, connecting with each other. So thank you so much, Becky.
Oh, thank you so much.
That was awesome. Now, can you let us know one more time? I know you said your podcast, but where could we reach you online?
Yeah, so my website is www.becomingwithbecky.com. And I actually love, I would love you to get the free download if you want that. And then I send out like just a weekly Word Effect, idea kind of thing that just reminds us about putting the power of words to work. And I do really agree. I just have to add that there's just such power in connecting. And when I was doing Becoming Threads full time, it's kind of taken a back seat right now to pursue some of these other things, but I hope to bring it back forward once it's the right time. But the thing that I love the most about it is connecting with other women. And they would see different t-shirts and they would say, I have to have this shirt, because they had a story behind those words. And I loved it. And their story was different than mine, but we found a connection. Just like you could connect to my story about having the boy, then I wanted the girl. And it's kind of a lighthearted story. I know there's like bigger problems in the world, but it helps us just see that like little things and big things affect us, because we have it in our mind how we think it's going to happen, and then it's how it really happens.
I love that. Thank you so much, Becky. That was amazing. Make sure you're checking her out on Facebook, Instagram, and go visit her on her podcast too. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.